I have been obsessed with Aristophanes' myth of soulmates since I was in middle school. Imagine me with a retainer, an oversized hypercolor t-shirt, praying. Starlight, star bright, where the heck is my soulmate? Where is he? And how will I know when I've found him? I say middle school, but the truth is, the myth of Aristophanes has driven most of my adult life. I would be sitting in an airport lounge, crossing my fingers, and hoping that the Jon Stewart doppelganger sitting a row behind me were my possible soulmate. Or maybe he and I went to the same school, but he graduated a few years earlier, but we'd meet up at a reunion and make sexy faces at each other. What's up, Jon Stewart? But in all these musings, what I'd never considered was that there was someone out there looking for me, and that their life depended on finding me. And I had to connect with them, not so that we could grow together side by side, but so they could live a bigger and better life without me. This is Milena. She just celebrated her 20th birthday. She grew up in the Bay Area of California. She loves art, fashion, traveling to warm places like Hawaii, and creating memories with her friends and family. In fact, she just returned from a trip to Europe. It's impossible to tell from these photos that for the first 12 years of Milena's life, from the time she was 6 months old, she had to get a monthly blood transfusion. Milena had beta thalassemia major, a genetic blood disorder which leads to early death and complications often caused by an iron overload. The only cure for someone with beta thalassemia major is a bone marrow transplant. And because Milena is Filipino, her best chance of finding her match is another Filipino. Milena comes from a big, beautiful Filipino-American family, but only 1 in 4 patients finds their match within their biological network. She's from California, which has the highest percentage of Filipinos in the United States. But even after more than a year of consistent bone marrow testing drives, she still hadn't found her match. And that's not surprising. If you are white, you have close to an 80% chance of finding your match within a national registry. The odds drop if you're a person of color or mixed race. Asians and Pacific Islanders make up only about 5% of the national registry, and of that number, 0.6% identifies Filipino. The Philippines is an archipelago of more than 115 million people, but we don't have our own registry. And so almost all patients have to depend on other Filipinos within the diaspora and hope that they sign up in countries where they can. Living 3,100 miles away was me, a high school English teacher and Filipino citizen. I came to the United States in 1994 for boarding school in Connecticut. It was a dream that my late father supported, even though we don't have any family in the United States. I can actually point on a map where my ancestors are from, because to this day, much of my extended family still lives in one of those 2 places. In April 2013, I was 34 years old and living in Providence, Rhode Island. I was walking home from work when I stepped on a flyer with photos of children of color looking for their bone marrow match. Brown University's football team was holding its annual 4th bone marrow testing registry drive. So I had seen these posters before, but I assumed that I was ineligible. You see, because of my travel history, I can't donate blood in the United States, so I thought that I would also be precluded from donating bone marrow. But on this particular day, I didn't want to go home. I was mourning the loss of my student and advisee, Elizabeth, who passed away only a month earlier. I'd spent the last few weeks catatonic in my apartment, and I figured if I want to hear laughter, I was guaranteed to hear it on a college campus in the spring. So I walked to Brown. I registered. That took less than 10 minutes. And after that, they asked for some information about my ethnic background. 6 months later, I got a call from Be the Match, telling me to go to the Rhode Island Blood Center for further testing. And several weeks after that, I learned that I was the perfect match for an 11-year-old Filipino girl. And that's all I knew about her. And had we both not consented to sharing information about ourselves a year after the transplant, that's all I would know about her. But knowing she was Filipino, it was so easy for me to imagine my sisters as 10 and 11-year-olds, and I suddenly felt this incredible sense of love and responsibility for a child I might never meet. I want to just take a quick poll. How many of you here think or thought that donating bone marrow is a really painful, harrowing process? Yeah, I thought the same thing, actually. The truth is, more than 85% of donors donate through a process that's similar to a blood donation. I was of the 15% that donated through a surgical procedure. I would read testimonials of former donors, and they would say, all I felt was an ache in my lower back. And I'd think, oh my God, you're lying. I get it. We want to get more people to sign up, but you are significantly downplaying the pain. In fact, the night before my procedure, I was lying in my husband's arms in a hotel room, crying, because for the first time, I confessed to him that I was so scared. But that's what I looked like less than 24 hours after my procedure. Less than 5% of my bone marrow had been aspirated from my lower hip bones, and I was under general anesthesia the whole time. I walked out of Mass General in Boston with only 2 Band-Aids on my lower hip, the kind of Band-Aids used for paper cuts, and a little packet of ibuprofen that I didn't even need to take. A month later, I was dancing to Get Low at my sister's wedding. It was hot. And by then, all my bruises had disappeared. The writer M.L. Stedman explores the metaphor of bone marrow donations in one of her essays. She writes, "The process takes from me without taking away from me. I haven't given anything up." I didn't even give up time. If I added up all the hours that I spent in a clinic or a hospital room, starting from the moment that I walked into the Rhode Island Blood Center and ending with the minute that I woke up after being asleep, it would add up to 11 hours. 11 hours over 3 days. And most of that time was spent getting a robust physical, after which my doctor and nurses told me that I was healthy, strong, and, I quote, blessed with a remarkably thin medical file. I understand why people say that I'm generous or courageous for giving bone marrow. I appreciate it. But I hope that this picture proves to you that my part in this process was easy, pain-free, and almost prosaic. The real hero in all of this was Milena. Milena was in California undergoing severe and intense rounds of chemotherapy so that all of her bone marrow could be killed to make room for mine. She felt all the side effects of chemo, from mouth sores to hair loss to being immunocompromised for almost a year. I remember a video that I saw of her little sister singing Do you want to build a snowman? To Milena, who was on the other side of a door in a hermetically sealed room where she would have to stay until it was safe enough to go home. I'm not the hero here. It was her, she, all the time. The Asian American Donor Program flew my husband and me out to California so we could meet. One of her doctors told me that I was her statistical 1 in a million match. 1 in a million. It's not lost on me that if my father had not supported my dream of coming to the US, I would most likely be in the Philippines, and Milena would most likely still be looking for her donor. She and I were strangers to each other, but I could not be more intimately connected to another human being. She has my immune system. We have the same blood type now. She no longer needs blood transfusions. And I have family out in California. Our reunion was covered by national networks and news shows based in the Philippines, not just because it was heartwarming, it is, but also our matching is so incredibly rare. I remember a Filipino reporter told me that I looked like her sister. And I laughed because that's how people now compliment a middle-aged woman who is so obviously not the sister of the younger person standing next to her. Because it's impossible, right? She's 24 years younger than I. She hasn't been to New England or the Philippines. I had been to California only twice, and one of those times she hadn't even been born. If you lined up the timelines of our lives, they would run parallel to each other. But that's true if you looked only at the beginning of her life and at the beginning of mine. Wisława Szymborska writes in her poem, Love at First Sight, they are certain they've never met before, but what if they brushed past each other 1,000,000 times? I got to talk to Milena's great-grandmother. In Tagalog, she asked me, where is your family from? Taga saan ang pamilya mo? And I told her. Turns out, her great-grandmother, who immigrated to the United States in 1941, she had grown up with my grandfather in a small town in a rural region of the Philippines called Pangasinan, where they speak a language I don't understand. Can you imagine how much pride and joy and solace I got from this moment? That my grandfather, who had been dead at that point for 16 years, was with us, or a part of him was with us, in my body and in the body of a girl whose great-grandmother knew him when he was a little boy. Here's something else incredible. 4 days before I flew out to California, I learned that my first round of IVF was successful, and I was pregnant with my first child. I remember so clearly lying in the fertility clinic as my doctor implanted an embryo in me. And I've got astigmatism, and so to me, it looked like a pulsating dot on a black screen. Magical. Microchimerism happens when cells from the fetus move through the placenta and bind themselves to the mother. And what is this entire story anyway, but a series of pulsating dots bound to each other by a similar story? This is when Milena and me met. My story begins with a child. Elizabeth, the child whom I loved so profoundly that her death had me walking to Brown University to register to be a bone marrow donor. Elizabeth, in her own way, saved the life of another child, Milena, who now shares a genetic history with my children, Isabel and Maya. A few months before Elizabeth went off to Stanford, which was her dream school, she gave me a card. She had one instruction. Don't open this until you get back to your apartment. There's a surprise. Oh my gosh, I was so excited. You see, Elizabeth was the kind of student who, if you asked her, the rare student who is, if you asked her, would you like Indian food or pizza for dinner, she would say yes. So I thought I had scored a generous gift certificate to my favorite restaurant in Providence. But when I got back to my apartment and I opened the card, what came out was confetti and glitter, which my mother calls stardust. And I watched, as if in slow motion, as the glitter floated in the air and then got caught in the fibers of my rug, so that when the light hit it just right, my floor looked like it was shimmering, which made me think of Nabokov's short story, Spring in Fialta. There's a line in which he describes the kind of light that makes tinfoil glimmer on the pavement. And in this light, we all vanish, dissolve, and pass. It's beautiful, but I don't think I believe that anymore. And around the same time that I discovered Aristophanes' myth of soulmates, I also learned that much of the twinkling in the night sky is actually light from dead or dying stars, light that traveled thousands of light years before finally reaching the earth. I'm so moved by that metaphor that children are wishing on stars and our lives continue to be affected by people who've been gone for a long time. And as I look out into this audience, I'm so hopeful that maybe there's someone here who has the exact alchemy that another person needs to live. And maybe that person hasn't even been born yet. If you are between the ages of 18 and 44 and in good health, please register. Please. And if you are lucky enough to get that call asking you, are you ready to activate this match? Just say yes. I promise you, it will be one of the most sacred and joyful experiences of your entire life. Because what an exquisite gift, right? Someone gets to live because you exist. And what an incredible gift for you too. To know that in your moments of darkest grief, the kind of grief that has you howling at the moon, you can be comforted by this thought, that the people you love the most in the world, a child, your papa, they will continue to live on, their stories carried gently in someone else's bones. Maraming salamat po.